To see them, you have to be in the right place at the right time. That's how it was when I saw the butterfly lion. I didn't dream it. I didn't dream anything of it. I saw him. He was blue and shimmering in the sun, and one afternoon in June. And that was when I was a young boy, a long time ago. But I don't forget. I must not forget. I promised I wouldn't. I was 10 years old. I was away at a boarding school in Wiltshire. I didn't want to be there. I hated it. It was a diet of Latin and stew and robbery and detentions and cross-country runs and chilblains and squeaky beds and semolina pudding. But that wasn't the worst of it.
Thought you'd escaped, did you?
Look, he's crying.
I want my mummy.
Where?
Empty your pockets.
Just a few pennies.
And a couple of gumdrops.
I'm Basher Beaumont, king of this school, and no one dares touch me. Captain of the rugby team and top of the class in every lesson because all the teachers are afraid of me. My father is on the board of benefactors, you see. One word from me and he'd sack them all on the spot. They'd never get another job teaching again. I'm Basher Beaumont, king of this school, with my hair pasted back short, and I dress smart because I command respect, but I'm not afraid of getting my hands dirty. I've got a mean right hook, and I can knock anyone out. Isn't that so, Michael?
Yes.
I'm Basher Beaumont, king of this school, and don't you forget that.
I had often thought about running away, but I never knew how to pluck up the courage to do it. And following a letter from my mother, I was getting a bit homesick.
Yeah, what have you got there?
Look, it's a letter from his mummy.
Oh, give it back!
What does it say?
Dearest Michael, I hope that you received your parcel safely. I was so shocked that socks, shortbread and peppermint could weigh so much. Hopefully they've let you keep it in your room. Are you making any friends? I hope so.
Friends? Him?
Wait, look, this is the best bit. Go on, read it. Read it out loud.
No!
Do you want my fist in your eyeball?
Be happy. Lots of love. Mummy.
You're pathetic. You're nothing but a baby. And don't think I haven't heard about your plan to run away. I'm king of this school, and I know everything.
You're never going to escape.
Try as you might.
Go on. Why don't you give it your best shot?
You haven't got what it takes.
Too wet behind ears.
Scared of your own shadow.
You're stuck here,
Stuck here. Stuck here.
and there's no way out.
The next day, Basher Beaumont cornered me in the boot room and smeared me with boot polish.
There you go.
I'd done badly in the spelling test, and Mr. Carter had stood me in the corner of the room with a book of my book for the whole lesson. Everyone was scared of Mr. Carter, despite the fact that he was old and slow.
I'm as fit as a fiddle, thank you very much. Mr. Carter, it said that he was an officer in the army. It said that he's rescued and saved all his regiment from enemy fire. He was a small, thin man, and he had a very strange eyes, an eyebrow that twitched when he spoke. He taught English. He made every pupil into the best readers. They had the smartest handwriting, and they were the greatest spellers. Discipline, that's what these boys need. Punishment's the key. That and a fear of failure. Is that all you got right, Michael? 9.5 words out of 10. You're an embarrassment.
Pathetic!
I can take no more. The future, I decided.
That was it.
I took off the next Saturday afternoon.
I only had a small bag, so I could travel fast.
I snuck out of the back door after lunch
I ran straight across the playing field,
as fast as I could.
climbed the fence.
But my shoe got caught.
Oh, I had voices. If I was seen,
That'd be the end of it.
I pulled harder at my shoe, but it was stuck.
I began to panic.
Harder. I began to twist and turn my whole leg.
Wiggled at my foot.
The voices were growing closer.
Yes, it did. I broke free.
Oh, over the fence I went.
I was free.
I was free.
I ran as fast as if bloodhounds were after me.
I'm not stopping until I was through Innocence Bridge and out into the muddy beyond.
I had escaped. My plan was to walk to the station. It was only 5 miles. I'd catch the train to London.
And take the underground home.
I'd walk in and tell them that I was never
Never ever.
going back.
There wasn't much traffic around. And I pulled my coat around me so no one could see my uniform. It was beginning to rain hard. And I took shelter under some trees. Along the road was a high brick wall. And at the end was a massive arched gateway. And at the top stood this great stone lion. And I stopped, almost scared at the sight of it. As I grew closer, I noticed he was almost roaring in the rain with his lip curled and his teeth bared. And I stared some more. And then I heard a car come around the corner. I ran through the gate and flattened myself up against the wall until the car disappeared. Whew. To be caught would mean caning. 4 strokes across the back of the knees, maybe even 6. But worse, it would mean going back to school, back to detentions, and back to Basher Bone.
Who are you? What do you want? I said, who are you?
The old lady was no bigger than I was. She scrutinised me from under the shadow of her dripping straw hat.
I didn't
She
think...
had piercing dark eyes that I did not want to look at.
Oh, I didn't think it was going to rain today. Lost, are you? The dog says you're on private property. Run away from that school, did you? Well, if it's anything like it used to be, I can't say I blame you. But you can't stand out here in the rain, can you? So you'd better come inside and have some tea. We'll give you a nice tea. Yes, Jack? Oh, take no notice of Jack. He will bark and no bite.
I stopped and looked at her again. She smiled.
Well, are you going to stand there and catch yourself to death, or are you going coming in?
I sniffed as the rain dripped from my nose, and I followed her inside.
I followed the old lady and her dog back to their house, which was huge, almost as huge as my school. Much of it was covered in red creeper, and there were a dozen ivy-clad chimneys sprouting from the roof, and we sat down close to the stove.
Oh, the kitchen is the warmest place. We'll soon have you dry in no time. Scones. I always have scones on a Sunday and tea to wash it down with. All right for you? You know, you must be the first young man I've had inside this house since Bertie.
The smell of scones wafted through the kitchen, and I had 3 before I even touched my tea. They were sweet and crumbly and succulent with melting butter. She was talking to the dog. I didn't think she was.
Don't you fret, my dear. Millie hasn't left you out. I have a special scone here with your name on it. See? Gold letters spelling the name Jack. Now, would Sir like jam on it too?
I kept looking out the kitchen window. The sun has now burst through the clouds and was lighting up the hillside, and a perfect rainbow arched through the sky. But it wasn't the rainbow that caught my eye. Somehow the clouds cast a strange shadow over the hillside.
Ah, you see
don't you? The shadow was the shape of a lion, like the one over the gateway.
The sun's come out now. It always does, you know. It might be difficult to remember sometimes that there's sun behind the clouds. But the clouds do go in the end. Now, I don't want you to think that I want you to go, because it's nice to see a young boy eat so well, and it's nice for the company too. But all the same, I'd better get you back to school after you've had your tea, hadn't I? You'll only be in trouble otherwise. You mustn't run off, you know. You need to stick it out, see it through, and do what needs to be done, no matter what. My Bertie taught me that. Bless him. Or maybe I taught him. I can't remember now.
I couldn't stop looking at the lion on the hillside. He was now blue and shimmering like he was breathing, as if he was alive, as if he wasn't a shadow anymore.
No, you're not seeing things. It's not magic. He's real enough. He's our lion. Bertie's a mine. He's our butterfly lion.
What do you mean?
I'll tell you if you like. Would you like to know? Would you really like to know?
Yes, please.
We'll have another scone first and another cup of tea, and then I'll take you to Africa. That's where our lion came from, and where my Bertie came from too. Bit of a story I can tell you. You ever been to Africa?
No.
Well, you'll go. We're all going. Bertie was born in South Africa, in a remote farmhouse near a place called Timbervarty. Shortly after he started to walk, his mother and father decided that a fence must be built around the farmhouse to keep the compound safe for Bertie to play.
There, that's the fence built, right up around the whole compound.
But will it keep us safe, Dick? It must keep us safe.
Well, this is the strongest fence that any man could build. There'll be no lions getting in here, my dear.
Well, it might not keep the snakes out, but at least we'll be safe from lions and leopards and hyenas. Enclosed in the compound were the lawn and gardens at the front of the house, and the barns and stables at the back. It was all the room that any child would need or want. But not Bertie. The farm stretched in all directions as far as the eye could see.
Bertie's father farmed cattle, but times were hard. The rains had failed once too often, and all of the creeks and riverbeds had dried up. With fewer wildebeest and impala to prey on, the lions had begun to stalk the cattle. That's why I had to be away from home so often, to guard my cattle.
And every time he left, he would say the same thing.
Now don't you ever open that gate, Bertie, do you hear me? There's lions out there, hyenas. They're waiting for you. Now don't you ever open that gate. You stay put, you hear?
Bertie would have to stay behind the fence and then watch his father ride out. And then he would be left with his mother, who was also his teacher, as there were no schools for at least 100 miles. Bertie's mother, too, would always be warning him not to go outside of the gate.
Oh, but it's so exciting! Look, there's an elephant over there, and it's flicking dirt on its back, and there's a leopard. Wait. Oh, can you hear that? It sounds like a lion.
Indeed, but remember what happened to Peter and the wolf?
Oh. My mother was often sick with malaria, and even when she wasn't, she would often be listless and sad. But there were good days. Days when she played the piano for me, or play hide and seek.
Quick, Bertie, run and hide. I'll count to 10 and I'll come and find you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm coming, ready or not? Where could he be? Is he back? Is he behind here? No. Where could he be?
loneliness of Africa, though. Some days, we'd stand out looking through the fence, and she'd tell me stories of her home in England. But those good days were rare. Every night, I'd snuggle up to her, hoping that today she'd be happy. But so often she wasn't. And that's when I was left on my own.
There was a watering hole not far from the farm. When there was water in it, it became Bertie's whole world. He would sit there for hours with his hands and face pressed up against the fence, just watching the wonders of the veld. At the giraffes spread legs drinking water, at the browsing impala with their tails twitching upwards, and the warthogs snorting and snuffling under the shade of the shingai trees.
Oh, baboons, zebras, wildebeests, and elephants too!
Bertie always longed for when the pride of lions would come padding out onto the veld. First the impala would spring away, and then the zebras would panic and gallop off. And then the lions would have the whole watering hole to themselves. Bertie would wait for hours for them to arrive. He got to know the life of the watering hole so well, it was as if he could feel they were there before he could see them.
Bertie never had friends, but he always said that he was never lonely as a child. And whenever his mother was well enough, he would beg her to take him outside of the compound.
I can't, Bertie. Your father has forbidden it.
Oh, but
I'm sorry.
Week in, week out, Bertie would have to stay behind his fence. He made up his mind, though, that if no one was going to take him out into the veld, then he would go by himself. Something always held him back, though. Perhaps it was the tails of the wild black mamba snakes, whose bites would kill you within 10 minutes. Or the hyenas, whose jaws would crunch you to bits. The more he grew up, though, the more that compound became a prison to him.
one night, when I was just 6 years old, I was looking out at the watering hole, hoping to catch the lions coming down for their sunset drink, as they often did. I was just about to leave, when all of a sudden, down the side of the watering hole came a solitary lioness. I couldn't believe my eyes, but then, behind her, on little unsteady legs, out came tumbling a little lion cub. I couldn't believe it. I tried to call for my mum. Mum! Mum! Oh, but it was no use. She couldn't hear me. But it was just then that I noticed. I looked a little bit harder and I saw it was a beautiful white lion cub. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. It was then that all of a sudden they just disappeared. Oh, I rushed back inside.
Impossible. You're seeing things that aren't there. That, or you're telling fibs.
Oh,
one or the other.
I'm not telling fibs. I did see it was a white lion cub.
What's all this noise?
Now look what you've done. You've woken your mother.
I saw it, I promise.
Boy says he saw a white lion cub out by the watering hole.
I did.
What did I tell you about getting overexcited?
And I told you, you must be mistaken.
It was no use arguing with my father. It was about 1 week later. I was sat down, and my mother had just gotten a nice book for me to read. And it was just about then when my father burst in.
Well, we got her. Huge, massive lioness she was. She must have taken about half my cattle or something. I mean, I tell you, she won't be taking any more.
You shot her?
Of course I shot her. What are you looking at me like that for?
My heart sank. It must have been the lioness that I'd seen, but that means the cub was left there all by itself.
What if she has young ones to feed?
There's no need getting sentimental, my dear. It had to be done. No doubt about it.
But what about the cub?
I said...
Time for bed now, Bertie. Go on, I'll go for a moment. Must you be so hard on him?
Boy needs to toughen up. This isn't the city. There's wild animals out there who could kill him.
Oh, maybe if you spent some time with him.
I'm busy.
And with that, Bertie's father left the room.
One morning, about a week or so later, Bertie was awoken to the sound of urgent neighing. He quickly leapt out of bed and ran to the compound fence to see a herd of zebra galloping away, being chased by a couple of hyenas. Soon, 2 more hyenas approached, with their eyes fixed on the watering hole, and that's when Bertie saw the lion come.
No! But it wasn't white anymore. It was covered in mud, standing with his back to the watering hole, frightened. Bertie grabbed hold of the fence. Finally he shook it and he shouted at the top of his voice.
Wait, stop! No! Run! Move! Run!
But it was no use. Bertie flung open the fence and ran towards the watering hole, yelling and screaming.
Get away! Just get away!
He was shaking his arms like a wild thing. The hyenas turned tail and started to run. Bertie started picking up pebbles and flinging at them in a rage. They started to back off, but not for long.
Stay away! Just stay away!
He quickly reached the watering hole and quickly shielded with his body to shield the lion cub from the hyenas. They were now growing closer and closer.
They were snarling and sneering, creeping inch by inch closer.
Their mouths dribbling as they could almost taste the smell of Bertie and the lion cub.
Get back! I said get back!
Bertie picked up the cub in his arms, and the cub didn't even resist. It just sort of buried its head into his chest, shaking in fear.
What have we got here? Smells like fresh meat.
Lovely and juicy.
Fresh meat.
Don't keep away, otherwise
What? Touch us? Shout at us? You can scare us. Go and scare us.
Just then, a shot rang out. It was Bertie's mother. Another shot rang out in the air. The hyenas almost jumped out of their skin.
Just got a gun.
Take cover! Run!
Run for it.
I've never seen my mother run before. She hugged me tightly. So tightly! Oh. We took the cub back inside, and my mother made some warm milk whilst I bathed it. It was then, once all the mud came off, that the bright white fur was showing. See? I told you! He's white! I told you! He is white!
They wrapped him in a blanket and placed him in a small basket by the stove to keep warm. They fed him again because he was so hungry. And then Bertie lay down beside him, and with his hand holding the lion cub's paw, he fell asleep. He was still asleep when his father returned home, and then they told him all that had happened.
Please, Father, I want to keep him.
So do I. We both do.
You can't keep a lion cub, Bertie, for God's sake. You'll grow up to be an adult, a vicious, wild animal. Come on, Bertie, you can't keep a lion. You know that.
Well, we can't just throw him back to the hyenas. He needs us, and maybe we need him. He'll be someone for Bertie to play with for a while. It's not as if he'll have any brothers and sisters.
All right. You can keep your lion.
And so the lion came to live amongst them in the farmhouse. He would sleep at the end of Bertie's bed, and wherever Bertie went, he would follow.
He helps me do my chores around the barn. He helps clean up, really. And he sits under the table whilst I'm eating my dinner. Oh, and he sits there and he tickles my feet whilst my mother's teaching me to read or write or to do my sums.
He even followed him to the loo.
He did.
They were never apart. Bertie saw to the feeding and would give him milk 4 times a day from one of his father's empty beer bottles. Later, he was able to drink from a soup bowl. There was impala meat whenever he wanted it, and as he grew fast, he wanted more and more of it. For the first time in his life, Bertie was truly happy. And they would sit side by side on the sofa, and Bertie would read the story of Peter and the Wolf to the lion cub. And every night,
He's a lion, not a person. Oh, lions don't need names.
Bertie's mother was terribly patient with the lion, unlike his father, who was less happy.
Well, torn up another bloody cushion.
We have others.
And my newspaper. Have you seen what he's done to my newspaper?
Bertie's mother loved having the lion around, and there was even a new spring in her step.
Lions should not live in houses.
Oh, nonsense.
The lion had brought a new sense of love and laughter into the home. But this had been the best year of Bertie's life. But lions grow bigger, and this lion was no exception. This had been the best year of Bertie's life. But when it ended more painfully than he could ever have imagined.
Well, as I was going to say 5 minutes ago, you'll soon be 8 years old, Bertie, and your mother and I have been thinking.
Are you right, Mother?
Yes, your mother is fine.
Now listen to me, Bertie. A boy needs a proper education, a good school. As it happens, we found a place for you in England.
England? But isn't that really far away?
Listen to me, Bertie. Now concentrate. Your Uncle George and your Aunt Melanie have very kindly agreed to take you on. You will stay at theirs in the holidays. They may come to visit you in term time. They will be your mother and father for a while.
I don't understand. I've got a mother and I've got a father. Have I done something wrong? Have I been naughty?
Bertie, no, it's just...
Don't you want me anymore?
We want you. We love you.
Now listen to me, Bertie, I'm getting tired of this. You will go to school.
I
In
met a
French
Frenchman in
July.
Johannesburg who runs a circus. He's always looking for lions, elephants, what have you. Now think about it like this, Bertie. He could train the lion. The lion could have such a better life. No, it's not up for discussion.
He's not for sale. Tell him, Mother, tell him he's not for sale.
It's been decided.
You can't. I promised him. Don't put him behind bars. Everybody's going to laugh at him. You can't. I promised him, please.
I can and I will.
I hate you. I hate you both.
Bertie!
Oh, leave it be.
I told you. I told you.
And I told you it was for the best.
For Bertie, the betrayal was total. And that night, he decided what he was going to do.
I waited until I could hear my father's deep breathing from next door. Then, with the gun I took from the rack, I crept downstairs, the lion closely behind me. We crept out into the night, and the compound gate yawned open noisily. And just like that, I was out. Like a spy on a top-secret mission, I was free. But I hadn't thought about the dangers around me. I just wanted to get as far away with the lion as possible. Come on. Come on, that's it, boy. Oh, don't stop. You haven't got time to stop. Come on.
Just then, a clumping of trees became a herd of elephants wandering towards him. Bertie quickly ran for it. He ran as fast as his feet could carry him. And then, as the sun came up over the veld, he climbed to the top of the copier and sat down, with his arm around the lion's neck. The time had come.
Be wild now. You've got to be wild, okay? Don't come home. I'll put you behind bars and all they're going to do is laugh at you, okay? So please don't come home. All my life I'll think of you. I promise all my life I'll think of you. Now don't follow me, okay? You can't follow me. No, stop. You can't follow me, okay? Just stop. Just stay here. Go away. Just go away. I don't want you anymore, okay?
With tears streaming down his face, Bertie ran as fast as he could, and for as long as his feet would carry him, he ran all of the way home. And it was only then when he stopped to look behind, and the lion had gone.
Goodbye, old friend.
Bertie, what are you doing? Where is the lion?
Oh, Bertie, what have you done?
Day after day, my father would go out searching for the lion, and each day he would come back empty-handed and blazing in fury.
Now what am I going to tell the Frenchman when he comes to the farm, Bertie? How is this going to reflect on me? Did you ever think of that? God, I should strap you! Any father worth his salt would have strapped you, but I didn't. Are you even listening to me, Bertie? Hey?
I couldn't take my eyes off the veld. In my head, I wanted the lion to stay away, but in my heart, I wanted him to return. Every day, I would pray on my knees and hope that he would learn to hunt and defend himself. It was raining when the Frenchman arrived.
Le Cirque Malot, c'est a great circus from era beyond. From town to town, city to city, we entertain their crowds and bring smiles and laughter to little children's faces and make grown men and women gasp and sit on the edge of their seats. Although rather spoiled at night, I'm a kind and honest man. I was raised by my dear grandmother after both my parents were killed in an accident when I was just a boy. My grandmother told me to be true, honest and respectful. I take great pride in my appearance wearing a waistcoat and sporting a veteran hat and moustache. Gone? But where has it gone?
Little bit of a mix-up there. My boy left the gate open and unfortunately the lion just broke free. There was nothing we could do to stop it, unfortunately.
Such a shame indeed. It would have been magnificent to have a white lion in our circus.
It was then when my mother came rushing in.
Look over there, it's the lion. He's come home, he's come back to us. We all looked out to see the lion padding across the veld, yowling pitifully. Bertie flung open the gates and ran to greet the lion. First he was hesitant, but he soon let Bertie put his arms around his neck.
I'm sorry.
Magnifique.
I'm so sorry. Please forgive me.
He looks so through.
He's trembling. The poor thing must be so frightened.
He's panting around her and as thin as a skeleton.
We helped bring the lion in and we gave him a wash and we watched as he ate ravenously.
He is incredible, magnifique. He is white as you say, white as snow, and tame too. He'll be the star of my circus. I shall call him La Prince Blanc, the White Prince. He'll have all that he needs, all he wants. Fresh meat every day, fresh straw every night. I love my animals, you know. They are my family. And this lamb of yours, he'll be my favourite son. Have no fear, young man. I promise you, he will never go hungry again. The sky's my witness, I promise it.
You see, Bertie, he'll be happy. That's all that matters, isn't it?
I knew there was no use arguing. The lion wouldn't survive in the wild by itself, so I made him one last promise. I promise, hey listen, I promise that I will never, ever forget you, and I will come and I will find you, okay?
He'll be fine, don't you worry. One day he must come to France and see my circus.
They loaded him into this big wooden crate. I had to help them load him on because he was nervous and he didn't want to go on. I looked out at the wagon holding the crate and it rocked from side to side as it took him away.
A few months later, Bertie found himself on a ship, steaming out of Cape Town, bound for England with his mother.
It'll be okay, Bertie. It'll be okay.
I'm not going to find him. I'll never give up. Never.
Is that it? Is that the end of the story?
Oh, I should say not. You know, I'm always doing that, you know. Letting my tea go cold. Oh no. Up until now, this has been Bertie's story. But it wasn't just his story, it was my story too.
But what about the lion? Did he find him? Did he keep his promise?
You must remember that true stories don't always end how we wish them to. Now, would you like to know the truth about what happened, or shall I make something up just to keep you happy?
I'd like to know what really happened.
Then you shall. Whilst Bertie was growing up in Africa on his farm, I grew up here in Strawbridge, in this echoing, cold cabin of a house, with its deer park and its high wall around it. I grew up, for the most part of that, alone. You see, I was an only child. My mother died giving birth to me, and my father, well, he was rarely at home. Maybe that's why Bertie and I got on so well from the moment we first met. Like Bertie, I never went out. I didn't even go to school. That's me. Ah, yes, I had a governess. Her name was Miss Tulip, but most people called her No Lips, due to the fact that she had very thin lips and she was quite stern-looking. She always believed that that's how one should be if one was a governess. Oh, she would move around the house like a cold shadow and hardly ever smiled. And when she spoke, it was in a cool, unemotional tone, with a very stern look on her face. Yes, she lived upstairs, at the top of the house, and her room was always perfectly organised, tidy, and kept simple. She would say, an untidy room is an untidy mind. Order is the best way. Structure and discipline. Oh. But then there was Nanny Mason. Bless her heart. She brought me up. She taught me all the do's and don'ts of life, you know, just as all good nannies should, of course.
Oh, my little pen. You must always remember your P's and Q's. No matter what, always be polite and well-mannered. Manners don't cost now, do they? And always treat others as you wish to be treated yourself. Nanny Mason was a rather plump, but lovely and kind lady. She came from a large family with about 8 siblings. She had the most infectious laugh that could light up even the most crowded of rooms. She had a wicked sense of humour. And the strangest of habits, like eating peanut butter and jam sandwiches and always running up and down the stairs.
Oh, I wish I could spend the day with you instead of doing my studies with No Lips.
You mustn't say that, little miss. You're very lucky to have such a knowledgeable teacher such as her. I wish I could have some proper teaching like you. Besides, her bark ain't that bad. Maybe a little bad. But she's just passionate is all. Passionate about doing you right.
Every morning we spent doing my studies with Miss Tulip, and afternoons we spent with Nanny Mason. We would often go for walks, or as she would call them, adventures. Except on Sundays. Sundays I could do whatever I wanted. I would fly my kites or I would read my books. And I loved my books. My favourite was Little Women. No, it was Black Beauty. No, it was Heidi. I don't know, I loved them all. I loved how the stories took me all over the world, and that was how I made my friends as well. Until I met Bertie. It was just after my 10th birthday, and it was a Sunday, and I was going out to fly my kites.
Now, just to wrap up warm. Don't need you catching your death out there. Here, put this scarf on. I'll be fine, I promise. There's not much wind out there. Don't know if she'll fly. right. Nanny Mason was always right. I ran as fast as I could up Wood Hill and it still didn't want to budge. Until suddenly a massive gust of wind came up and I was swirling up crazily up into the sky until, oh no! Blast! You stupid, stubborn thing! It was stuck in one of the high trees. I tugged as hard as I could, but it still didn't want to budge. I almost gave up. I went to go and sit down. And that was when I saw him.
I can get it if you'd like.
Bertie quickly began to climb the tree, and not before long had rescued my kite. Who are you and what do you want?
Oh, I can fix it for you if you'd like.
But you can't, it's completely broken. It can never be fixed.
My mum says never say never, because never's not even a word.
Of course it's a word.
Not in our dictionary.
Who are you?
Bertie Andrews.
You're from the school up the road, aren't you?
You're not going to tell me, are you?
Been in the wars, have you? Oh, the bruises on your legs.
Ow! I've run away from home.
Where are you going?
I don't know. In the summer months, I live with my aunties in Salisbury, but I don't really like it there.
Well, haven't you got a proper home to go to?
Of course I do. Everyone has, but mine's in Africa.
Africa? That's amazing! What's it like?
It's the best and the worst. I had to stay inside of the compound the whole time I was living there because of all the wild animals.
Bertie and I sat on top of Wood Hill for hours and told me all about Africa, about the watering hole, and about how his white lion was in France somewhere in a circus.
See, I know I'm going to bring him home, but the problem is, I can't always bring him back to my childhood home like I wanted to.
Why not?
Because my mother died. She had malaria, but I actually think she died of a broken heart. You can, you know. And then, when she died, my father remarried and sold the farm, so I don't want to go back there and I don't want to see him ever again.
I don't know what to say.
It's alright, you don't always have to say things. The White Lion taught me that. Do you really live in that big house over there? It's almost as big as my school.
I do, yes, but it isn't as pleasant as you might think. My father is away all the time because he works in London. I don't go to school, so I don't have any friends. Nanny Mason and Miss Tulips look after me. Aren't you worried you're going to get in trouble?
Only if I get caught.
But you will. You're bound to. You should go back before you're missed.
Yeah, I suppose you're right, but well, I don't like it there. I haven't got any friends either.
Well, we could be friends. I mean, if you like.
Really? If you let me see you again, I'll fix your kite. Really, I will, I promise.
It's a deal.
Yes!
And so it was agreed. Bertie and I would see each other every Sunday at around 3 o'clock, and he would sneak through the woods so that nobody from the house would see him. We'd sit on top of Wood Hill and talk more about Africa. Sometimes we would read my books, and other times we'd fly my kites. Bertie and I used to live for those Sundays. We both did. And 2 years passed and we became firm companions and the best of friends. He really told me more and more about Africa, and I really believed him when he would say that someday, somehow, he would rescue his white prince, and he would never have to live behind bars again. I remember that the school holidays always dragged because Miss Tulips was on her happy holidays and Bertie was back in Salisbury. That meant that I was left with Nanny Mason.
Are we all set? I've got just the thing planned for us today.
We would often go for walks, or as she would call them,
Adventure walks.
walks to the church, walks to the shops, walks to the fields.
Walks on the wild side.
Well, where are we going today?
A nature walk. How exciting!
tale.
Bertie and I grew up too quickly. We had one last summer together before I was to be sent off to convent school and he was to be sent off to Canterbury Cathedral. We used to treasure each meeting that we had, but the love between us would stay unspoken. I remember he gave me a going away present before he left.
Ta-da!
What is it?
It's a kite.
Oh, I love it!
It's just like the one that got caught in the trees when we first met.
Oh, thank you.
You can think of me whenever you fly it.
I used to keep that kite on top of the wardrobe because if it were to break, it'd be like losing Bertie altogether. Because that was the last time that I had seen him for a while. We wrote to each other regularly, but his letters were so short and his handwriting was so tiny I could hardly read the letters. And mine were long and they were rambling. He was very miserable being shut inside the Canterbury Cathedral walls. There were bells. So many bells.
A bell to wake up.
A bell for morning
A
prayers.
bell for lunch.
A bell for lessons.
A bell for bedtime.
A bell for evening mass.
A bell to sleep.
Bells.
Bells.
Bells! And then the storm of war broke. My father looked so grand in his khaki uniform and his shiny brown boots. I remember he said goodbye to Nanny Mason and I on the steps. He climbed inside his car and he was driven away. That was the last that I would see from him. I used to hope and pray that Bertie would never be called up. But I remember his last letter from college.
Dearest Millie, I'm old enough to join up, so I shall. I've had all I can take of fences and walls and bells. I want to fly free, and this seems to be the only way that I can do it. Besides, they need men. I can see you smiling at that. All you remember is a boy. I'm over 6 foot now, and I shave twice a week. Honestly. I may not write again for some time, but whatever happens, I shall be thinking of you always. Your Bertie.
And that was the last I would hear from him.
Did he ever talk about what it was like during the war?
Not for a very long time.
He always said it was a nightmare best forgotten. But then, one day, he just told me everything.
I was 17, marching up the north of France with my regiment. Hearts and heads held up high with hope and expectation. But it wasn't before long I was crawled up in a little ball on the floor, with the whiz-bangs and the explosions just rattling the world around me, and then the whistle would blow again.
All right, come on, get ready, everyone get ready, get on, take your positions! Please God, please God.
Just think of a happy memory, just a really nice thought, and just focus on that and nothing else. That's what I do.
Over the top!
Their next fix. They were marching, walking across no man's land, towards the German trenches and into the rat-a-tat-tat of machine gun fire.
Rat-a-tat, 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 rat-a-tat! To the left of him, to the right of him, his friends were falling.
It was terrifying, worse than any known nightmare. And then it was all over again. It was just its daily chore chipping away at our minds. And then there was the muddy, water-filled trenches. Oh my goodness, and don't even remind me about them.
Huge he was. Swerves of God. Flying away around his nose as he lay there asleep. Jones was exhausted. Didn't even notice. Didn't have the heart to tell him really. Had to. God knows that Jones that rat we had. They did let this morning. Any news from home?
None, but I don't expect any either.
You should write to her, that girl of yours.
Wouldn't want to give her a worry.
I comfort her to know that you're right, though, surely.
I say, isn't it your birthday, Andrews?
I didn't know.
Suppose it is, but not much worth celebrating, really, huh?
Another year you stayed alive?
Oh, blimey, Nelson, that's a bit much.
Who knows what I mean, don't you?
Oh, of course I do. It was just then that the Germans decided to attack again. By now, I was an officer. I blew my whistle and led my men over the trenches, and as usual, the Germans were expecting us, and then the slaughter began.
What happened? What happened?
Oh, Bertie suddenly got hit in the leg. He fell into a shell hole and thought that he'd stay there until maybe an end escape under the cover of darkness, but his wound was bleeding too badly and he couldn't staunch it. So he decided to crawl back to the trench whilst he still had the strength to do so.
But he could have been hit, he could have been blown up.
But he crawled as hard as he could, further and further.
Must keep going. Must keep going.
His wounds throbbed in pain with his movement as he dragged himself across the uneven earth. Several times he fell into small craters in the ground, and just then there was an explosion that shook the ground close by. Bertie rolled to take cover, but as he did, he rolled into barbed wire and got tangled.
The wire bit into his hands and fingers as he tried desperately to break free. He took out his knife and tried to cut the wire, but it was too tough.
Damn it!
He laid back in the mud, squeezed his eyes shut, and cried out.
Please tell me you didn't give up.
Everything suddenly went quiet. It was as if someone had clicked the pause button. The gunfire stopped, the explosions went silent. Bertie opened his eyes, tears pouring from them. He couldn't believe what he saw. There in the distance ahead of him was the lion, the white prince. It was standing there with a bright light shining all around him. Bertie held out his hand towards the lion, and the lion lifted his head as if to beckon him to keep moving. And then he was gone.
The machine gun started.
The explosions erupted.
Bertie frantically cut through the wire with a new sense of determination. He crawled with all of his might, never stopping until he reached the trench again.
It's Andrews. Fetch the medic.
But just as he was about to climb back into the trench, he heard a cry coming from no man's land. It was a cry he could not ignore. He turned back into the smoke and the heavy gunfire. He crawled as the cries became louder and louder, and that's when he found two of his friends lying on the ground and injured so badly that they couldn't move. He lifted one of the men up and carried him towards the trench. There were bullets spraying all around him. He fell a couple of times but refused to give up and staggered on until they both tumbled into the trench. He then climbed back out, stood up and began to walk forward. But almost at once, the firing stopped. Bertie was so weak he could scarcely walk, but he managed to find the other wounded man and drag him back to the trench. Do you know, at the end, they say that both sides, the Germans and the English, were up on their feet cheering him on. Once Bertie reached the trench again, he collapsed out cold. The place went silent.
Medic! Fetch the medic!
Was he dead? What happened? Please tell me he couldn't have died.
It wasn't by accident accident that I found him. 3 years had passed, and I had still received no word from Bertie. He had warned me, but every time the postman came, I used to hope and pray that I would receive something, but I never did. I used to read about how people in the war would come back blind, gassed and crippled, and I could have barely thought that that was going to be Bertie. So I became a nurse in hoping to find him. I was sent 50 miles behind enemy lines, not too far from Amiens. I remember the hospital was a converted chateau. It had great wide staircases and huge windows, and it was so cold in the winter. Many of the men used to die from the cold, but we did the best that we could. I remember the sister of the ward governed the hospital with an iron fist. We were all very scared of her, and I swear she was related to No Lips. I remember the first day that I met her.
I know what visions have brought you here. Whilst I am glad they have brought you to our door, that is where you must leave them, at the door. You are not angels of mercy, swooping back down to mop the brows of grateful men. You are a worker here. You will do as you are asked, no matter how dirty, no matter how dull. Do I make myself clear?
Yes, sister.
Hands. Airs and graces will not be tolerated here, especially from those who have come down from an ivory tower. If you have any doubts about being here, the door is there, and you can leave now rather than waste mine or your time from being here. Don't want anyone here who's only playing at being a nurse and thinks of this as some sort of poetic personal crusade.
I can assure you.
You will only speak when you are asked. Duties begin at 7:50 a.m. sharp and end at 8 p.m. Where possible, you will be given 3 hours off, usually between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. Night nurse duties begin at 7:50 p.m. and end at 8 a.m. All duties begin and end with prayers. You look rather young. Are you sure you're of age?
Yeah. Yes, sister. I celebrated my 20th birthday not long before I came here.
Duties are hard. Days are long. You will be required to clean, make the beds, tidy the bedside tables, and clean the sluice rooms. You will also be required to fetch and carry things, mop the floors, hand out drinks and meals, roll bandages, fold slings, sterilise instruments, and clean rooms.
I have worked as a nurse.
It remains to be seen what you can and cannot do. I will be the judge of your competence. If you think your duties are dull and mundane and you'd rather be at home playing with a dutiful wife,
I'm
then...
not married.
Oh. I will have someone fetch your things and show you to your room where you can get settled.
Are those moans and groans coming?
Off you go then.
Thank you, sister. I was at breakfast one morning, and it was June 1918. I was reading a magazine called the Illustrated London News, and I turned the page and I saw a face that I knew instantly. His face was thinner, but it was Bertie. His eyes were deepest and gentle, and there was his name. Captain Albert Andrews, VC. He had been awarded a Victorian Cross Medal for his bravery. There was a whole article about what he had done and how he was recovering in a hospital. In this hospital, he was in a different ward, but he was here. My Bertie was here.
Good heavens, girl, you look like you've seen a ghost.
It's Bertie's sister. He's here. He's in this hospital.
What are you waiting for? Go and find him.
But I haven't finished my rounds.
Don't be so daft, go, I will sort them.
But
Are you still here?
I don't know what shocked me more. The sister's reaction of Bertie being here. I didn't care. My heart was racing. I didn't know what to do, so I just ran up the stairs as fast as I could, and I almost tripped, and 2 of the nurses looked at me with irritation, but I couldn't care less because Bertie was here, and what was I going to say to him? Would he still recognise me? What was I going to say? at his door. He was asleep in a chair, and my heart warmed instantly. A single tear fell down from my face, and it was a tear of sadness and happiness. I walked in and propped up one of his pillows. Hello, you. Been in the wars, have you?
Is it really you?
No, I'm just some rotten nightmare. Of course it's me, silly.
Oh, I thought I'd never...
Never isn't a word in our dictionary, remember?
How could I forget?
Millie would visit him every opportunity she could. I even helped to do some of her chores so she could spend more time with him. But don't go telling anyone I did that. Won't have anyone thinking I'm a pusher. Anyway, after a while, Millie was allowed to take him out for walks on crutches, and that's where they saw it. They were in town walking past the local cafe, and there, hanging on the window, was a giant poster.
The fabulous Sir Miller, the Prince Blanc, the White Prince. There on the poster was a big picture of a lion roaring, a white lion, the most beautiful, magnificent creature from far and wide.
It's him. Millie, it has to be him.
Bertie, be careful.
The circus?
Okay?
The lions, elephants, clowns.
What?
Oh.
Ah, sir.
That's it.
Well, Monsieur Mello, the sir, state priest, pray priest. The circus is finished. Sad, very sad. The soldiers, you understand, they want beer and wine. The girls too, maybe. They do not want the circus. No one comes, and so, Monsieur Merlin, we have to close the circus. But what he do with all the animals? We keep them, we feed them. But the shells come, more and more they come in his house. How you say? Bombarded. Oh! Many of the animals are dead. But Monsieur Merlin, we say, he keep only the elephants and the monkeys and the lion, the White Prince. Everyone loved the White Prince. The army takes all the hay, no food for the animals, so Monsieur Mello, he have no choice but to take his gun and shoot them. No more circus. Finish. Triste. Très triste.
All of the animals?
No. He keep the white lion. He could never shoot the lion. Said he brought him from Africa. He loved the lion like a son. The lion made him a rich man, but he's not rich anymore. He lost everything. Now we have nothing. Nothing except the white lion.
This, Monsieur Marlowe?
No.
Where does he live?
7, maybe 8 kilometres away. It is an old house by the river. Over the bridge and on the left. Not too far.
They hitched a ride with one of the army oaks, leaving Bertie's crutches behind. There wasn't much left of the old house. The barns were shell blasted, the ruins blackened by fire. Only the main house still had its roof, but it too had not gone unscathed. One corner of the building had been holed and was partially covered by a canvas that flapped in the wind. There was no sign of life. Bertie knocked several times. There was no answer.
Maybe we should come back a different time. I don't like it, Bertie. I'm scared.
Bertie wouldn't listen. He gently pushed open the door. Everything inside was dark. Bertie took Millie's hand.
He's in here. I can smell
school food, Bertie?
Oh, Monsieur Malone?
Oui.
My name's Bertie Andrews. A long time ago, you brought a white lion for me in Africa. I was wondering if you still had him. Hello, boy. It's okay, it's me. It's all right, Millie. Don't worry. We're old friends. Do you remember me? Do you remember Africa?
You're the one. I'm not dreaming it. You're the boy from Africa? The one that tried to set him free?
I suppose I've grown a bit, but yeah, that's me.
I did all that I could, but look at him now. Just skin and bones like me. All my animals are gone except for Prince Clark. He is all I have left. I had to shoot all my animals. I had no food left. And I could not let them starve.
Don't you worry, Mr. Malone. Me and Millie will find you food.
The driver of the ambulance, Bertie waved down, thought at first he was just giving a nurse a lift back to the hospital. So you can imagine his shock when he was faced with Bertie, Monsieur Malone, and the lion. They were taken back to the village where they sat outside the local cafe to discuss what would happen next. It was all Bertie's plan. They walked back to the hospital, where they were met outside by a colonel and me.
Colonel, I'm here to meet you. Where's that colonel? Colonel! Afternoon, sir. Monsieur Malone here. He's an old friend of mine. He needs rest, sir, and a lot of good food. The same goes for the lion. I was wondering, sir, if we could use the walled garden behind the hospital. There's a shed where the lion could sleep. It'd be quite safe, and so would we. Don't worry, he doesn't eat people. I was wondering, sir, because Monsieur Malone said that if I can feed him and take care of him, then I can bring him back to England with us.
Well, the brass treat of it. Who the hell does he think he is anyway?
This is Captain Albert Andrews, sir. He's a patient here.
Andrews, what, the Andrews who was awarded the Victoria Cross?
I think it's a splendid idea.
You want us to help with the lion?
Imagine if we allow the lion, a symbol of Great Britain, to be shot. Wouldn't be good for morale now, would it?
Yes, I suppose you're right. As always, sister.
Come along, Monsieur Malone. Let's see if we can't find you a bed.
And so, the lion was taken back with us to England. There was a huge crowd of people waiting to see us come off the boat.
The British lion comes home, roared the newspapers the next day.
And we brought the lion back here to Strawbridge. I married Bertie at the church. I remember we had a bit of a disagreement with the vicar because he wouldn't allow the lion into the church for the wedding. Oh, Nanny Mason. She adored both Bertie and the lion, but she would insist on washing him often because she said he smelt. Oh, the lion, that is, not Bertie.
We can't possibly have you pulling like that, can we?
She called us her 3 children. And Nanny stayed with us until she retired. We never had children of our own. Well, the lion was enough. And he would roam the park freely and never escaped. Bertie, well, he never fully recovered from his injuries, and his leg often gave him pain. But on Sundays, the 3 of us would wander the park together and then go up and sit on Wood Hill, just like the old days. Do you know, that lion would follow Bertie everywhere. And whenever Bertie had to go out, he would just sit and wait patiently. The lion lived to a ripe old age, and when he died, we buried him down there at the bottom of the hill. Bertie wanted it, so that he could always see him.
I'll never forget.
Yes, Bertie grieved for weeks, and there was nothing I could do. He would go for long walks and, I don't know, he just seemed to shut himself away. But anyway, one day I was in the kitchen and he came bursting in.
Millie, I've got it. Do you see what's on the end of this stick? It's chalk!
And?
Well, that white horse, the one at Uffington on the hillside, the one that they created thousands of years ago, that horse never died, did it? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to paint our butterfly line out on the hillside and he'll be there forever.
It took almost 20 years to do it. Every spare hour we had, we were up there scarping away with spades and trowels, and we had buckets and wheelbarrows to carry away the turf. Oh, it was hard, back-breaking work, but it was a labour of love. And we did it, Bertie and I, together. And it was just after then that the butterflies came. Adonis blues they were. I looked them up. They'd come to drink on the chalk. And from then, our lion was known as the butterfly lion. There you go, that's my story.
What happened to Bertie?
Well, he died. He's dead, and it's what happens to all of us. He's buried at the back of the hill there.
Doesn't it get lonely living here by yourself?
Sometimes, but then I have Jack.
I'd like to come and visit you again, if I'm allowed.
You know, I'd like her very much. But in the meantime, we'd better get you back to school, hadn't we? Because you'll only be in trouble otherwise. Come on, I'll drive you.
And so she did. She dropped me off at the bottom of the school park, by the fence. No one had missed me. But Buster Beaumont, he was in the sick room. He caught the measles. Well, all through supper, I couldn't stop thinking about Bertie, Millie, and the butterfly lion. I decided to look Bertie up on the honours boards. But I couldn't find his name anywhere. Just then, Mr. Carter, he saw me.
My fellow, what are you doing?
I'm looking for a name, sir. Bertie Andrews, sir?
There's an Albert Andrews who won the Victoria Cross. Do you mean him?
Yes, sir.
You'll find his name under the war memorial in the chapel by the east window. Although he didn't die in the war, he died some 15 years later. He lived down in that Stallbridge, a big house with a gate with a lion on his head. Yes, he had a plaque made of him because he had got the Victoria Cross. I remember his wife came with a dog to unveil it. Poor thing. It's just her and the dog stuck in that big old house by themselves. She died a few months later. Yes, house has been empty ever since. Now, you must excuse me. Cook is making raspberry jam. I simply love raspberry jam.
I found the plaque in the chapel. It read,
Albert Andrews, VC. Born 1897, died 1968. An old boy of this school. And the lion shall lie down with the lamb.
all night I tried to puzzle it out. Mr. Carter must have got it wrong. The next afternoon, I went back to the house. I knocked as loudly as I could, but there was no answer.
Hello? Is anybody there?
We all are.
Who said that?
I climbed the hill and sat down. I looked down at the great house beneath me. There was bracken and grass growing out of the gutters and around the chimney pots. Some of the windows had been boarded up, the drain pipes hung, and well, they were getting a bit rusty. The place was empty. I felt the sun warm the back of my neck. A single butterfly flew around my head and landed on my arm. Then another, and another. They were all blue.
Adonis blues.
Keep him white for us. Don't ever